up, you guys? My name is Alex Hampton, and today I'll be reviewing the comic book Static Season 1. This is the return of the Milestone universe, the Milestone characters. And by the way, if you have not read this comic book, or if you haven't read the Milestone Returns comic book, I would encourage you to read it. It's a really great find. You can find it on Amazon for $3.99. You can find it on Apple if you have a Apple device of any kind. You can buy the digital ebook for about $3.99 as well. But before I get into the review, excuse me, if this is your very first time ever watching any of my videos, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Then hit that bell right next to it that we get all the notifications of every time I'm releasing a video here on my YouTube channel. Guys, we are on Patreon. That is right. We're on Patreon. Check us out on Patreon. We have 3 tiers on there. Help us support us on Patreon. That way we can create more content here on my YouTube channel. Now I've gotten out the way, let's jump into the review of Static Season 1. Now, Static Season 1 takes place right after the events of the Milestone Returns comic book series. So if you have not read Milestone Returns Infinite or Milestone Returns, this comic book will kind of seem out of place for you. You won't understand why Virgil is doing what he's doing in this comic book. So I would advise you to read that comic book first before you read this comic book, because it takes place directly after the events of that particular comic book, where we see Virgil basically returning to school after he had a major fight with Francis, who's aka Hot Streak, in that particular comic book, where they duke it out in school because he was messing with Virgil, and Virgil basically lit him up to the point where, you know, Francis could have died, or Francis could have been severely injured, and he wasn't. You see in this particular comic book that Virgil is a little bit more darker and grounded. And what I mean by that, if you're going into this comic book series thinking about the Virgil that we know and love from the Static Shock TV show, or even previous iterations of comic books of Static, I'm here to tell you this is a different type of Static Shock character that we have seen portrayed on the pages before, because he doesn't necessarily want to be a hero. When we find out that he has powers, he's struggling with the fact that he has to go through life to have these powers. Like, he doesn't know how to fully control his powers. All he hears is static and popping and things going off in his head, and he feels the energy seeping from his veins that sometimes he doesn't know how to control it. In this particular series, Richie and his friend Frida know that he has electrical powers, and they know that he was at the Big Bang. You know, in this particular series, the Big Bang happened where a lot of protesters were protesting protesting the injustice in this world, and then out of nowhere there were tear gas and other different gases that was thrown into these protesters, which created the Big Bang. And there's this thing where a lot of people have died, and there's some people who've survived the Big Bang, where now some of their parents are disowning them or sending them off to jail or to a mental facility. And you know, Virgil's family, like his mom, his dad, his sister, are well aware that Virgil has powers, that Virgil is a bang baby, and they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to adjust with that the lifestyle that he has now. There's a cool moment in the comic book where they see Virgil interacting with his family before the events of the Big Bang, where they're like this loving family, and Virgil is like a science student at this particular program, excelling in school. And then they show present day of him interacting with his family, where he doesn't want to talk to his family, and his family's trying to press him about living life with these powers, asking him how does he feel, and basically things where he didn't want to talk about how he's getting through day to day living with the fact that he has superpowers. Fast forward through that scene, Hot Streak shows up outside of his house challenging Virgil to a one-on-one fight, and it's like he is fighting off Francis Hot Streak in the middle of the road, or the middle of Static's house, and they're just going at it. And by the way, the characters of how they were drawn in this comic book look amazing aesthetically. The color palette, the drawings look so realistic, and this particular fight scene as well looks so good. I mean, this comic book really took me back to why I love comic books. The way they portrayed their characters and how they look, and the fight scenes and the things that we're doing were really, really cool. As we get deeper into the comic book, you see Hot Streak and Static fight each other. Static gets the best of Hot Streak, and then out of nowhere, Hot Streak turns around and burns down Static's house, where his family are outside of the house, and they're like, "Oh my God, our house is gone. It's on fire. It's gone." And that was a perfect cliffhanger to lead into the next comic book that they'll release later on, either this year or going into next year. This is definitely a different interpretation of Static Shock, of who we know as Virgil Hawkins, and I am very interested to see where they take this comic forward. I was very excited reading this different interpretation, and I just want to tell anyone who is a fan of Static, if this is something that you are not used to in terms of, like, you know, watching the show and watching and reading other previous comic books, this particular version of Static is something completely different that I think you may enjoy. I would encourage you to check that out. Also check out the Milestone Return to Infinite comic book as well. Again, I think that comic book is about $3.99 as well, so you definitely want to check that out. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Please like, comment, and subscribe to my YouTube channel, where you get all the updates of every time I'm releasing a video here on my YouTube channel. Guys, we're on Patreon. Check us out on Patreon. We have 3 tiers on there. Your support there helps us create more content here on Momentum Media. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and as always, you have a blessed day.